I never thought I would utter these words with the utmost sincerity, but here we are. Elon Musk is... he's right. I'm John Cadogan from AutoExpert.com.au. New cars cheap, but Australia only. Website, card. Apologies, dude. This report is not actually about cars. If that's what you want, you might need to scratch those testicles for the next 20 minutes or something. Quite therapeutic. Hours can seem like minutes in this state. Trust me. Ask me how I know. Not about cars, except that Electric Jesus is in it. He is kind of a cornerstone of this report, but the report itself is actually about our proud nation sinking to an even lower level in the global laughingstock cesspit. Who doesn't want that? Only the Australian government and its monumentally fucked up bureaucracy could turn Elon Musk into a beacon of truth and righteousness. And here we are. I mean this sincerely. That's not a joke. A lot has happened in Australia in the past month. So on April the 13th, a nut with a knife at Bondi Junction, which is in Sydney's eastern suburbs, if you're not from around here, well, he managed to kill 6 people and injure 12 more before being neutralised thanks to the quick and accurate response of a heroic police officer. I presume she really wasn't expecting to draw her weapon and end somebody's life in the line of duty that day. She had a completely different mission at the time before this all kicked off. And I certainly hope that she's doing okay in the circumstances, because I imagine it's very stressful doing that. Doubtless her quick thinking and actions prevented even more tragedy on that day. So 13 out of a possible 10 minimum score, if such a score is possible. Obviously, this is probably not going to be some sort of lead story nationally in a place like America, is it? But it was a pretty big deal here in Shitsville, because these kinds of events are thankfully rare here. A few days later, across town a bit to the west, a 15-year-old gets up during a church service, which is being live streamed, so the genie's already well out of the bottle there, and he allegedly stabs the priest. I say allegedly here because obviously this is all before the courts as we speak. Like, I've seen the footage, and who hasn't? It certainly looks like a deplorable act of violence to me, but I'm not going to speculate on the kid's guilt or innocence, which would be ultimately for a court to determine, obviously. This is all terrible stuff, though, right? Terrible enough, certainly, in its own right. But then, of course, senior federal government fuckwits get involved, and it gets even worse. Australia has this thing called an eSafety commissioner. This sounds kind of like a person, but it's really a sprawling government bureaucracy, like federal government bureaucracy. At its head is Julie Inman Grant. According to Wikipedia, she is a former public relations cheese for Microsoft and then Twitter. Interesting choice. When I say Cyber Karen in just a sec, okay, I'm not referring to Julie Two Names, not at all. The former PR dudette, not doing that. That would be rude. And I have this strict policy never to be rude to someone who could just, on a whim, flip my switch, so to speak. So when I say that, I'm talking about the whole department. This is your tax dollars at work, right? So it's worthy of this dissertation. We're paying a whole Cyber Karen department to stop things such as serious cyber bullying on kids, like Australians under 18 years of age, also to prevent the cyber abuse of adults, to prevent the use of intimate images without consent, child abuse material, we're paying them to prevent that, and abhorrent violent material such as incitement to or instructions about committing things such as terrorism and other violent crimes. I got this information from Federal Cyber Karen's own document that tells the public what the fuck they actually do. And it all sounds like pretty noble, worthwhile stuff, frankly, as long as Cyber Karen's superpowers don't get abused to shut people up whom the government just arbitrarily hates. So, Cyber Karen demands that Twitter, now X, yanks the footage of the priest being stabbed. Having seen it, I would argue that it's deplorable and an act of violence, especially in its locational context. Like, the victim is basically on the hotline to, the big guy upstairs at the time. And I guess there's never a particularly good time to be stabbed, except after you're dead, possibly. But this was a relatively poor time, even in that context. But it's not actually that graphic, the footage. Cyber Karen is there to deal with online incitement to violence or instructions about how to commit violent crimes. And personal opinion, I fail to see how that particular video does either. Like, as an instruction manual, it's kind of a fail. Like, the priest survived and wasn't even hurt that badly, and the alleged perpetrator got caught, as well as I understand it at least, losing some of his fingers. So, he's somewhat worse off than the priest and in custody. Kind of a shit sandwich for him when you think about it, and the priest has become pretty much a hero with a massive PR boost flowing from this deplorable incident. Hashtag silver lining. Pretty sure that wasn't the plan, if there even was a plan. Who would know? Twitter, now X, which is of course owned by Electric Jesus, and he is running it poorly, okay? They obediently yank this video in Australia. But that is insufficient for Cyber Karen. They want it pulled globally. And no, I don't know how Cyber Karen got the quaint idea that they could just up and police the entire world. Perhaps toxic waste from Peter Dutton's hairspray got in Cyber Karen's drinking water. We'll never know. Electric Jesus kind of thinks that he runs the world, obviously. So these kinds of over-the-top ultimatums from the likes of Cyber Karen do tend to stick deep in his anus, metaphorically. We'll get to that. And that's about when starchy Voldemort here, he decides to jump into the hot tub with Misinformation Albo, which was a movie I was kind of hoping Cyber Karen would yank for all time, frankly. Those fuckers, right, they can't agree on anything except that we need to limit free speech in Australia. The Online Safety Act has significant powers in it. We passed it when we were in government. It needs to be enforced, and if the laws are inadequate and they need to be strengthened or added to, then we would support any effort by the government. We need to get the right balance. We don't want to impinge on your ability to express a view in a democracy, but they need to do it respectfully. And it's a matter of enforcing the laws, taking action, giving the eSafety Commissioner further powers if that is required. But I think here we're talking about images in particular which are offensive and which can trigger violent reactions, which we saw earlier this week. The starch there, quoted by Auntie on April the 21st. Starchy Voldemort, Mr. Potato Head. Allow me to retort, you fucking genius. How do you actually know what caused these violent actions? Strange mental powers again? Dude? We've never actually had a legislated requirement for or a framework around respectful or inoffensive speech. That kind of thing doesn't seem that practical. And in fact, that kind of speech doesn't need protecting. FFS. Offensive speech is the speech that needs protecting, because you can't debate ideas freely without running the risk of offending someone. It's just not possible. You could try, you could strive to be inoffensive and still manage it. Like, I know people, and doubtless you do also, who just aren't happy unless they're offended. Why deprive them? Where or how exactly do you draw this line between respectful and disrespectful dialogue, or between offensive or inoffensive speech? Show me the fucking border between disagreeing and being offended, because I'd love to see that. One thing I'm certain of, though, I'm sure as fuck disinclined to let somebody like the Starch draw that line for me. We'd need a whole new federal agency to police this kind of thing, wouldn't we? The feelings police. He hurt my feelings, I'm offended. I'd suggest that's insufficient grounds on which to arrest or prosecute anyone. Like, dude, you have to be fucking kidding. We'd need far bigger prisons, would we not? The day before the Starch decided to go 100% hot tub time machine with misinformation Albo, Electric Jesus called Cyber Karen's cheese, duly two names, a communist. And this probably didn't help, but it seems not entirely inappropriate to me as far as metaphors go. There's a ring of truth, in part, to it. The Australia Censorship Commissar is demanding global content bans. Commissar. Ouch. Electric Jesus there. He also labelled Jackie Lambie and her eyebrows an, quote, enemy of the people of Australia, after she opined that he was, quote, creating hatred and was a, quote, social media knob with no social conscience. She further concluded that, quote, someone like that should be in jail and the key be thrown away. As a countermeasure, she resolved that she and the other 226 members of the Monument to the Death of Integrity in Public Life should turn off their Twitter accounts. None of them actually did this, of course, to my knowledge. They just should have. A kind of metaphoric barbed wire enema for Electric Jesus to, quote, show him that you mean business. Pro tip, Jack. Twitter has 368 million monthly users. Cyber Karen could turn off all of Shitsville's Twitter and it would barely even register with them. But it would, of course, impact and even disappoint the Australians who use it to communicate. Calling someone a knob and suggesting that they should be in jail with the key thrown away for disagreeing with Cyber Karen and taking it to court, which is a democratic right, let's not forget, is probably okay if you're some kind of dipshit upstart with a sign at a public protest. But this is a national legislator, a federal senator, a democratically elected representative of the people, for fuck's sake. And perhaps you still wonder why I call Parliament House a monument to the death of integrity. This is what happens when politicians are more concerned about the soundbite and the PR, the clicks, than they are with leading by example or enacting sensible fucking legislation. And then there's Referendum Albo, fresh out of the hot tub with the Starch.
Media platforms have a responsibility to make sure that misinformation isn't got out there. I noticed today, for example, on the way up here, they've removed various sites that were up containing fake images of myself superimposed on other people. That's the sort of thing that is going on social media. Social media has a responsibility to do the right thing here.
That was reported on Sky News and elsewhere. Now, this is the leader of the fucking nation, right? A career politician, a dude who gets up in Parliament and speaks. He's talking at a press conference. Nobody bounced him. He's not on the back foot. He's at a press conference and still can't string a fucking sentence together without multiple R's while his neurons catch up. Dude. God. He represents you and me on the world stage. Now, there's only 65 words in that tortuous soliloquy, plus 16 nauseating neurological spack-filling R's. Doesn't really inspire confidence, does it, is what I'm saying. It sends the wrong message and, of course, offends the articulate. Personal opinion. He might have been a step up from ScoMo, but realistically...
That's one small step.
At least Albo is showing you what the real agenda is here, and so too is the starch. So thanks a lot, gentlemen. They're calling it misinformation all the time, and of course the starch wants you to know he doesn't want to impinge on your freedom of speech. Dude, as long as you're always respectful and inoffensive, which Cyber Karen will adjudicate and, of course, prosecute. They've both got Cyber Karen at their beck and call to shut you down if you're not respectful enough or if you hurt their feelings. If the dictionary were in picture book, this is what dipshittery would look like. Albo really doesn't like being satirised, apparently. And here was me thinking that that's just like a trivial part of the job, being Prime Minister. Hasn't he got bigger fish to fry, like, I don't know, the cost of living being so fucking out of control? Fancy anyone having the temerity to, I don't know, make him look like a dead-set clown on social media. Pro tip. This is something that cartoonists at newspapers have been doing to prime ministers since time Emma frickin' Testicle. Dude. These fuckwits in power simply don't like it that you can be not only your own cartoonist now, but also your own publisher of the cartoon. They really hate that. They don't know how to engage with that, save for legislating it the fuck out of existence, which is clearly the agenda at play here. Albo is actually suggesting that social media has a responsibility here. That's insane. How is this any different to me saying something illegal on the telephone, right? Telstra is the platform, isn't it, in that case? Does Telstra have some duty if you and I hypothetically conspire by telephone to rob Fort Knox tomorrow afternoon at tea time? Probably not. How is YouTube and Twitter any different? Dear Cyber Karen, we're not actually conspiring to do that. It's just a hypothetical. I'd suggest that Twitter and YouTube, whatever, all the different platforms already have robust content policies in place. Like, Christ knows, it's hard to comply. And law enforcement already has the power to prosecute, for example, criminal conspiracy or other online crime. And individuals can take action against anyone who defames them. So what more legislation is needed exactly? The real agenda here from Albo the Clown and the Starch is to have social media platforms running shit scared of Cyber Karen, and thereby doing the government's dirty work for it by censoring the shit out of everything that you post, and not strictly within the framework of legislation, just doing it to avoid getting sued, basically. They just don't want widespread criticism online, the politicians, right? They just want to eliminate that. And this event, stabbing a priest, abhorrently enough, is simply a trigger to justify an incremental crackdown on the road to controlling what you may say publicly. They're using this event expediently as a tool to service their agenda to shut you up. Don't get me wrong. Stabbing a priest is bad. It's very bad. It's appalling. Don't do it. Bad idea. But these dickheads in power have made the battle between Electric Jesus and Cyber Karen into a bigger deal than the tragic event that sparked it off. A priest getting fucking stabbed mid-sermon. Or 18 people at a Bondi Westfield. It's bigger than both of them combined. And it's certainly bigger in their minds as well, and in the minds of the fucking media. This bullshit controversy over suppressing what occurred, allegedly to protect us, has become bigger than the event which caused it. That's how you know you're living in the golden age of bullshit. If only the focus of the bigwigs were on, prevention, or even educating ordinary people about best practices in the unlikely event that you are one day in the same room as a nut with a knife or a gun or a machete or, a freaking chainsaw. Run, hide, fight, probably in that order. Probably a fair set of broad, wide-ranging operational protocols in that situation. Just saying. Leadership advice on this, totally fucking absent. Disgracefully absent. Prevention of similar events in the future. I'm also hearing zip. Disgracefully. It's all about cracking down on the coverage, isn't it? It's like the event itself doesn't matter, didn't matter, has ceased to exist. Dear Cyber Karen, banning this video is bullshit in my opinion. The genie is already out of the bottle. It's still easy to watch if you want to, and it's not that bad objectively in relative terms compared with a lot of other stuff currently still on Twitter and elsewhere. For example, on the 22nd of November 1963, roughly a month before I was born, US President John F. Kennedy was assassinated. Now, it takes about 30 seconds for anyone with broadband to find a video of this assassination online. President Kennedy was riding in a convertible. He was shot by a sniper. The video on YouTube contains a graphic content pre-roll warning, and it is apparently not monetized. You see everything: the point of impact, the red mist cloud, JFK's head gets thrown violently back. The First Lady scrambles onto the boot and heads for the Secret Service guards. It's about 30 seconds long. It's very quick. It's been remastered in several uploads. You can watch it frame by frame if you want, in super slow-mo. I would argue that this event is objectively worse than this Sydney priest stabbing because A, it's substantially more graphic than that, and B, he's the president of the United fucking States, dude, not some unknown until recently priest. C, he dies, whereas the priest lived and wasn't even all that badly injured. And D, it's a depiction of the abject failure of arguably the best and most high-profile head of state security teams ever. In other words, the assassin was successful in achieving his objective, despite the US Secret Service's best countermeasures being deployed at the time. JFK's murder is, in fact, by any objective yardstick, orders of magnitude worse than the Sydney priest stabbing, albeit occurring 6 decades earlier. Nobody seems to have a problem with the JFK assassination videos being online, I note. I honestly don't see how Albo the Clown in a hot tub with the starch, Cyber Karen and Jackie Soundbite are trying to protect you from misinformation here. This event happened, right? You can't protect people from misinformation by sweeping what happened under the rug. That's impossible. We protect people from events such as this by oxygenating them, by calling it out as the unacceptable, deplorable conduct which it is. The only difference is, thanks to the likes of Electric Jesus and Google, everyone's a journalist now, aren't you? Anyone can put Albo in a clown suit or turn Peanut into Voldemort. But I'm pretty sure Senator Lambie did those eyebrows to herself. Just saying. They are quite distinctive. Eyebrows aside, that's pretty fucking democratic. You know, you being a journo now, if you want to be. But I would argue that it sure seems like those dicks in the hot tub really don't like you being one. It's a bit too democratic for them. Like, dude, someone's feelings might get hurt. Does the starch look like he gives a fuck about anyone's feelings but his own? Please. This is not about protecting you. That's just camouflage. It's a bipartisan attack on the freedom of speech in Australia. It's the only thing those dicks can agree on. For fuck's sake. I am totally with Electric Jesus on this one. So we must be quite close to the summit of Bullshit Mountain right about now.